Machine.
Hi there, it's Claire here, and welcome to Hot Pod Time Machine. This is the podcast where we talk about a decision from our past which changed the trajectory of our future. And I'm very excited to welcome someone really awesome who I met last year. He's fantastic. It's Benjamin Byron Davis. Hello, my friend. Hey, Ben, how are you
Well,
doing?
I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you doing?
I am boiling because now I'm recording in summer in a little hot box.
Oh,
I'm not in space. This is not real. Yeah,
thank God.
I know. I'm sorry. It's really what a disappointing start. I don't actually live in space. It's actually green screen and hot lights. So that's how I'm doing right now. So if you start to see me shimmering as the podcast goes on,
Yeah, that's not just glowing because of the wonderful, scintillating conversation.
yeah, totally. It's not you. It's the heat.
Okay,
It's
all
the
right,
heat.
all right.
So
Fair enough.
when I asked you to be on this podcast, without telling me about the decision, first of all, what was going through your mind? Because we make so many micro and macro decisions every single day of our lives. You know, we can decide to not go to the store, to go to the store, and that could change everything. You know, so what was going through your mind when I asked you?
I gave it a lot of thought. There's a lot of choices in life. There's a lot of and I've taken some big swings in mine in terms of geographical decisions and other risks. Uh, I narrowed it down to I did. In fact, I looked up. I found the email of my the casting email, because I don't, I have the same email address for 100 years, but I found the email that was the casting notice for Red Dead 1, which I almost didn't go to because it was in Santa Monica, and that's a long drive.
I was going to say, well, that's quite a drive.
Yeah, no. Well, at rush hour, it's a pain in the ass. But you've absolutely provoked a great deal of thought in me, and I guess the biggest decision, the biggest change, and the one I thought I'd address, and I guess talking to you in advance, I may not be the only one who thinks this way, but I think it was the decision to move from New York to Los Angeles.
Okay. So how old were you when you made this decision?
I was 27 years old.
Right. Okay. And you were already acting in New York. That was already happening?
I was already acting in New York. I was acting quite a bit in New York. You've got Broadway. I was not acting on Broadway. You have off Broadway. I think I did one performance that was technically off Broadway, and then you have off Broadway, and then you have downtown theater.
Right.
And I was doing a ton of downtown theater. I was doing some off Broadway. But I mean, this was in my 20s. There was literally times when I was doing multiple shows at the same time. So you'd have an 8 o'clock curtain, and then you'd have a comedy curtain at 11 for a different show, and didn't get paid for any of that stuff, and was as happy. I mean, that was wonderful, wonderful time. But that was through the 90s. Yeah. But then in 1999, I moved out here.
Before we talk about the move, what was New York like to live in and be an actor in that city in the 90s? What was it like?
It was amazing. I mean, it was magnificent. And those of us that were there that remember, I don't think there's one of us that doesn't think we were lucky. I mean, it's a hell of a thing, spectacular, I think, would be the answer to New York in the 90s. It was a wonderful time to be an artist downtown, and it was, it was a real vibrant community of people that were making theater for the love of it, alongside people that were making poetry for the love of it, alongside people that were doing performance art. The Coleus brothers, I remember, had a series of performance art routines that they would do, where it was all clown related. It was clowns. So
Nice.
they would plan for weeks, and they'd set up like a crime scene in the middle of Times Square with like uh, a chalk outline around a dead clown on the ground, and then they'd roll up. One would be a clown detective, and another, and it would, and yeah, I'm not doing it justice, but I remember it would be these wild sort of things that everybody sort of felt like. And the thing that's amazing to me now that I think about it, New York in the '90s, is there's so little document of it. You know,
Mm.
we didn't yet have. I've got grainy photos and bad half-inch videotape stuff, but nobody had cameras then, so it kind of, I think, can enlarge in our memory in a way I think it's harder to do now because everybody's filming everything all the time.
Yeah, and whilst that's amazing, that we can document things. I was walking along Brooklyn Bridge back in May. I was in New York, and there, people are taking photos, and I was taking photos. But there was this girl standing in the middle of Brooklyn Bridge, and she looked like an influencer type, and she was just doing all these poses and taking up all the space. And I thought, that's just like, come on, just get out the freaking road. Like, and I just thought, how full of ourselves as a culture are we? She's got no shame. I would be utterly embarrassed. I was embarrassed going, can you please take a picture for me? Because I'm on my own, And then I'm kind of doing a pose like, should I really work it, or should I just be like, I'm on Brooklyn Bridge? But this girl was going for it, and I thought, God, we live in such a weird, wanky world. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. But in the '90s, she probably would have been there. She'd just be doing that, no need for
Fair.
a camera.
Fair.
That was, uh, yeah, it is. It's amazing to me how everything, there was a thing I remember one day crossing around Broadway and 8th Street, and there was some guy, and it's New York, so there's always a bustle of people walking on the sidewalks in the middle of the morning anyway, on a Monday morning, and a guy in a suit seemed to have everything all together is crossing and the street, and something goes on, and again, there's no cell phones, but something happened, and the guy just starts screaming bloody murder and starts banging his briefcase on the middle of Broadway, and the papers fly, and everybody stops on both sides of the street and just watches this meltdown, and the guy throws his briefcase, and then he goes off, and there's just this sort of moment where everybody sort of looks at each other. We just witnessed this, and then everybody carries on and goes on with their day. And I just remember that sort of solidifying, okay, I'm a New Yorker now. I live in New York. This is how it goes.
I don't think I've only been there twice, and the last time I was there, again, it was last month, and I don't think that is changed. I mean, nobody really gave a shit about. In LA, everyone goes, "Oh my God, where are you from? Oh my God, that accent's just great." And in New York, people don't give a crap about anything. They just don't care, and I quite like it. It's very European. It's very like whatever.
Well, I think a lesson about LA is that the person asking you where you're from may not care either.
No, no, they're just being
No.
really nice, which is, I'm fine with that. I'm fine. Like, I come from Glasgow, where everyone's a grumpy bastard, right? So
Yeah.
I really enjoy the fake niceness. I'm like, yeah, thank you for asking me how I'm doing. Thank you very much. I think it's a
Well,
nice thing. It's okay.
I guess that's all right. I'm working very hard on maintaining my grumpy bastardness, though.
Oh,
It's,
I'm grumpy and dead on the inside, Ben. Don't like that. When I move to LA, that's not going to change. So we can go for a drink and we can be grumpy bastards together.
cheers. I'm down for that.
I'm
It
down for
sounds
that.
magnificent.
I'm down for that. And that's something else I was thinking before we talk about why you moved. I turned on the radio the other day, and it was a '90s radio station, and it was all like Smashing Pumpkins and Radiohead, and all of and Soundgarden, and all of the bands I really love, Pulp or whatever it was growing up with. And I thought about culture now, and I'm not saying that culture is better or worse, it's just different. But what I thought about the '90s was it is not as homogenized to me through my teenage eyes versus these older eyes than it is now. Now everything seems very compressed, very saccharine, very homogenized. Would you agree with that, or do you think I've just got rose tinted glasses on here?
I hesitate to. I think it's hard to identify an era while you're in the era.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that I don't know that we knew that we had it as lucky as we did. We certainly didn't know what was coming in terms of social media. But on the one, on the other, there has certainly been all sorts of progress in the arts, but it is interesting to me. I do think that in the 90s there was I think I don't know about homogenization, but I do know that I think that I wonder those of us in New York in the 90s were sort of all drawn to the city by the same heroes and the same sort of stories and the same narratives, and you know the writers were drawn by Dylan Thomas and Kerouac, and the actors were drawn by Brando or by
Yeah.
you know Meryl Streep or you know John Cazale or you know, but everybody was sort of there because they wanted to be a part of something in a way that I think I don't know with the in the sort of in the era, and this is without judgment, right? This is just an observation, but I think in the current era where the culture has sort of elevated people who are famous. I'm not quite sure why I know their names. You know, they're famous because they're famous. I think it. I wonder who. I wonder who the heroes are. I
Yeah.
wonder who wants to be the next Bob Dylan or the next Joan Baez, or who wants to be. God, I'm an old man, but you know, who
No,
wants uh, do people want to be a brand? Do people want to be an influencer? Do people want to be a corporation? You know, we've got all these films at this moment. There's all these movies coming out, and the heroes are the CEOs of corporations, and it's just kind of like we. That's interesting to me. It's
yeah.
interesting.
It's just, again, no judgment. It's just a sign of the times, and that's just the way that life changes. I taught for many years at a college, a music college. I only just quit it last December, and I'm very hesitant to be very down on Gen Z's upbringing and their culture, because those kids that I taught are incredibly intelligent, and they're very self-aware, and they're very aware why they have a low attention span, and they're very aware of their surroundings, and they also are very aware that about things like the environment and things that are given to them that they have to deal with now, that they are powerless to deal with. So I don't want to ever be like my parents and be like, oh, that just sounds like this band and this just sounds like this. Because it is hard for young people, and it's just a sign of the times. But it is interesting to me. It's like, are there icons or are there influencers? Because I know what you're talking about, films and music. Everyone's going to know who Madonna is long after she's gone, and everyone knows who Bob Dylan is. And Freddie Mercury.
Right.
Those were my heroes. Freddie Mercury was like, oh my God, like I thought he was incredible. And Brian May, oh, I just wanted to play guitar like Brian May growing up. So yeah, it's just the way that life has changed. But we can't be grumpy about it. We have to be.
Absolutely not. And the other thing is that there will be names from every generation.
Yeah.
Artists that make an impact, storytellers that make an impact, civil servants that make an impact, and I have no doubt that's going to be true of every generation. There is a thing that I think about when I was in high school. I got this is a very complicated thought.
Okay, I'm here for it. Okay, I'm here for it. Complicate my brain. Let's go.
I was in the booth recently doing ADR on a film, and the director gave a line read. And a line read, for those who don't know, is uh, um, the actor is putting the emphasis on a word that the director would rather a different word was emphasized. And some actors get very upset about them and don't like being handled the way you feel handled by a line read. I don't have that issue. That's an ego concern.
Mm-hmm.
I have an issue when you tell me to emphasize a certain word within a sentence. I can't do it. I don't know how to serve it, and so I can't make it organic. I can't do it. So the moment I get told, and to me, it's because it's activating a part of the brain that is using math.
Yes.
And I suck at math. I'm terrible.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the way in, because in high school, when I had an opportunity probably to get better at math, I got, when I think I was 14 years old, the thing would look like a toaster now, but I mean, I got a graphing calculator, Texas Instruments graph that would like draw a sine wave on the
Whoa.
screen calculator. And I was like, sorted. I don't ever have to be good at math.
Yeah.
I now have this machine and it will do the math for me for the rest of my life. Now, I bring that up because it makes me think about the things as an actor that you do. One of the things we do is we memorize. So I have in my head untold lines of Shakespeare, untold lines of poetry, untold lines of dialogue that I can recall at any moment. That's knowledge, right? If it's in the book, it's information. If it's in my head, it's knowledge. And there's a big difference between information and knowledge. Now, the 14-year-old me that got the calculator thought to himself, I don't ever have to learn math because now I've got this machine that's going to do it for me. That same kid is in Los Angeles half a month ago, and he can't do a line read because he can't do math, because he thought a machine was going to do it for him. And I don't have, now that same kid memorized Brutus's monologues from Caesar and memorized Yeats and Tennyson and Prufrock and all of those words are in my head. And when you actually own them, when it becomes knowledge, when it ceases to be information, it serves as a filter. And so to try and make this make any sense at all.
I love it. Keep going.
To our conversation about the current state of things, or Gen Z, or what have you, or, you know, the 90s when we didn't have the phones and the cameras and the social media. And now the thing that I am afraid of is that a young person is looking at their access to the internet or their access to a certain site or a certain depository of information, and they're confusing that with knowledge.
Yes.
So they're not putting it in their head. And if you don't have it in your head, it doesn't serve as a filter. It doesn't serve as a way to improve your intersection with the world around you. And yeah, get off my lawn.
I love it. But you're right. There's so many times where it's almost like I think people want to just be told something. It's just like they get served something. And, you know, I spent years really learning the guitar from scratch without YouTube. You know, really learning it, you know, like learning how to read music when I was playing the flute or the cello or the Yamaha organ, because I was a music nerd. I was such a nerd with music. So like really learning and like sitting and learning and feeling things and reading books and learning to draw, and not just, you know, just sucking in knowledge, you know, like you suck in lines and things like that. And there is a different way in which we consume information. And hey, I get lazy too. I get lazy. I get stuck down the scroll hole, as I like to call it, where I'm just doing this because I can't sleep at 3 a.m., watching, videos about the universe vibrating and stuff because I'm all into that now. I'm like,
Oh, you're totally ready for Los Angeles then.
I love it. I'm like, yeah, man, just gotta get on that frequency. Yeah, just gotta get on that frequency. And then all the good shit will come to me. Like, hasn't worked so far with my love life. But apart from that, feels okay. The scroll hole's fine. Puts you to sleep.
The scroll hole, is that Instagram? What are you doing that on?
I just look at Instagram reels and the algorithms picked up that I love stuff about manifestation, the universe, and Metallica pop things, crossovers. It's quite a ride. The scroll hole's quite a ride, Ben. But I love it. I get really locked in. It's terrible. So we're all guilty of it. We can all be watchers instead of learners. That's just the way that it is. But anyway, we digress. Let's go back to you being a young man in your late 20s. So you're clearly having a good time in New York. It's the 90s. It sounds cool as fuck. Why go to LA? Why?
Well, I was at an impasse. I lived in a really magnificent apartment. If you went to the window and you went like this, you could see the Empire State Building just a little bit out that one corner so that was a hell of a place. And it was a co-op. So I'd been there to the point where I had to shit or get off the pot, and I couldn't afford to buy in to the co-op. And so I was going to have to move. My grandfather, who was a very important part of my life, had passed away. He was also in New York. We were the only two in New York. And then I had some personal upheaval relationship wise as well. And it was just, I was going to have to put everything into a truck anyway. And a dear friend of mine, we were talking before we started recording, his son just graduated from high school, but a dear friend of mine from college in Chicago had just moved to LA, and he was doing well, and his wife was doing, or his then girlfriend was doing well, and they said I should come out for a visit. So I came out here, and it didn't suck. And I finagled through a lot of begging and pleading. I got a meeting with a very big agent at a very big agency, and he suggested that I could do well if I came out to LA. I just needed to I should write a one-man show, he suggested, which I already had done, and I had one, and I said, he said, well, then you should write a screenplay, and I had already done that. And he said, well, then you should move to LA. And I said, okay. And I put everything in a truck, and me and my buddy Damon, also from college in Chicago, drove me from New York to Los Angeles. I guess because I heard they needed another actor, I like to say. And it changed things. It changed everything.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying, things like your grandpa had passed, and also sort of private life stuff as well was going on. And it's funny that when that's why I want to move to LA, part of the reason, because my life has gone, well, it's like I've had 20 years of this, and now it's all flipped around, and your brain just goes, yeah, new chapter, yeah, why not? Like, it's kind of crazy, and people keep putting me off, but I feel it's the right choice. And when I was in New York, a lot of New Yorkers kept going, oh, just move to New York, why do you want to move to LA? Like, don't move to LA. Did you get a lot of that when you moved there?
Um, I guess a little bit. I did. I had seen it, and I think in some ways it's still kind of uh, true in a lot of ways. But it seemed to me, that the the folks that I knew that were doing well off Broadway, their shows would go to Broadway, and they'd be replaced in them by there's one in particular. Not it doesn't matter who, but by a famous name from a movie or from a
Sure.
TV show.
Of course. Okay, sure, yeah.
And so it kind of seemed to me that the way to get to Broadway was not through New York; it was through Los Angeles, if that's even the thing that I wanted to do. But the other thing that I want, the theater uh, didn't pay me, uh, and when it did, it would be enough for the first round of drinks after the show. There was no money in it, and there was certainly no security in it. And I hadn't joined uh, the union yet. But then there was another thing to the theater which was that the ephemeral quality of the theater, the fact that it disappears. And again, in a time before you could record everything well and document everything, these things, and there certainly was no place, there was no YouTube, there was nothing that you couldn't sort of turn the work you were doing into content that could be then used and monetized and all these things that nobody even thought about back then. And so it seemed to me, if you wanted to make things as an actor that endured, that outlived you, the theater might not be the place to do it. And on top of it, I wanted to prove to my father that I was not, a failure, and that I could. And so there was a lot of identity tied up in getting in the union and getting health insurance and getting, on a real TV show with, that was something tangible. And so those were all sort of motivating factors in the decision.
It's funny you mentioned you're trying to prove to your dad. I'm still kind of trying to prove to my parents that I'm not a failure. They just don't understand what I do. And
Yeah.
it's just a funny job, my dad said to me, so how much do you get paid for these Comic Cons over 2-3 days? What, £10,000 or something? And I was like, Dad, if I got paid £10,000 just for that, like, I would never have to, no. I was like, I'm not the star. I was like, no. My dad couldn't believe it. He's like, I just thought you get paid like £10,000-15,000. I was like, no, Dad, wouldn't have to work for quite a few months after that if that was the case. They just don't really get it. But then at 39 years old, I still think I'm not trying to overly prove myself, but there's just a little bit of that, and I think, does the insecurity fuel the creativity? Is that what's happening here? Would you say that is still the case for you, or have you got over it now?
No, I got over it. No, I'm in therapy.
So am I. High fives for therapy.
Yes. Have I gotten over it? No, you do. What I have gotten over is having to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I don't think that that's tied to any accomplishment. I think it has more to do with being at peace with yourself, being at peace with who you are, and the reality is I am there are few moments when I know exactly who I am and exactly why I'm here, and it's when I'm working and it's when I'm teaching. And outside of those two circumstances, I'm a total fucking disaster.
Well,
but I don't have to. None of that has none. I'm not driven to do either of those things by proving anything to anybody. I'm driven to do those things because it's where I know I am. It's where I know I belong.
Yeah, I feel that work makes me. I mean, work for me is not work. It feels like play, because we get to do a silly job, and I thank my lucky stars every day that I get to talk to amazing people, and my friends are all amazing and weirdos. We're all weirdos and I love it. But it's yeah, like work, even from when I was very young, I used to have a fanzine in the 90s. I liked what, I always had I always wrote music or did something. There's like a very calming feeling to knowing that you're good at something and that you're being useful and other people like what you do. And that makes me feel whole. But everywhere else, oh my God, I'm terrible. I don't like being vulnerable. Don't want to hurt anyone. Don't like just all of these. But yeah, everything's fine with work. Are we ever going to sort it out, Ben? Like, will there ever be a point where you think we bring it all together and we become a whole human?
It makes me think of a poem.
Oh,
But but are we? Well, I can do the poem. Here's knowledge versus information. Oh, this is New York in the '90s story, by the way.
okay.
And so I'll have to check it later because I'm probably going to have a word out of place. But I didn't have a notebook. I didn't have I didn't have my satchel with me, which seems impossible to imagine. But on the subways in New York, there was a thing called Poetry in Motion, and they would, there's these little cellophane slots on a lighted, rail, and there'd be, the chiropractors over here and the safety notifications over here, and the city was putting poetry, short poems up there as an effort to bring culture to the masses on their daily commute. And on the poem, on that one day was a poem called Keeping Things Whole, to your comment, by Mark Strand. And I was coming up, I think, from Battery Park, headed to the West Village, and I stayed on the train all the way to Columbus Circle so I could memorize the poem, which reads, when I am in a field, I am the absence of field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what is missing. Here's where I'm going to muddle it. When I walk, the air moves and fills in the spaces where my body's been. We all have reasons for moving. I move to keep things whole.
I love that.
Yeah.
I need a round of applause button.
Well, but that's Mark Strand. But that's now in my head, that poem. So anytime I hear the concept of, which is a hell of a concept, right?
Yeah.
Feeling whole, feeling entire, feeling complete.
Yeah, I mean, feeling whole and complete. I don't think it matters what you do in life or what you think your vibe is in life. Some people go and have families, they have 9 to 5. Some people do silly jobs like us, whatever it may be. The human condition is to not feel complete. We are like, I always think, a lump of clay, and everything that happens to us is a little impression, to the point that you end up being, at the end of your life, something that resembles whatever human you are. And I always go see my art teacher when I'm in Glasgow, and she's in her late 70s now, and she's blind in one eye, and she's in a little wheelchair. She can't really move around her apartment anymore, but she's amazing. She's still all there, compos mentis. And I said to her recently, how do you feel now? I saw her about 3-4 months ago, and do you have any regrets? She's on her own, she's got no kids, no husband. And she kind of paused with her wee cup of tea and looked around her apartment and said, I would do it all again in a flash. And it made me feel like, yes, okay. She's had hardships. She told me about her failed relationships and the time she was in debt and how she worked hard as a woman in the 60s and 70s to get what she's got, and she's all right. She's really happy. So that those kind of stories, and especially older people, speaking to older people, really always makes me feel like it's gonna be okay. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't have any older people in my family, so apart from my parents, but we don't talk like that. They just get at me for not earning enough money or something. I'm like, so just like they treat me like I'm 12. But I like that. So it gives me a sense of, safety, if you know what I mean. And I'm not scared. But I like that. My art teacher saying that to me. Do you feel a little bit more now that you're older that you can get towards, I guess, wholeness or a contented place, I guess?
I'll get back to you on that. I don't know. No, I still, I I'm still, I still am trying to get good at this thing and that I love. And every time I work, I feel like I grow a little bit more. And but I also encounter new flaws, new things to work on, new sort of uh, so I love this story of your art teacher saying she would do it all again. I don't, I'd love to get to that place. There's certainly things I imagine if I had to do over, I might do a little differently. The broad strokes of things though, no, I love being a storyteller. I love working alongside storytellers, and I I I love I love making movies, and I love I mean, I love every inch of it. And I know that, there's some actors that will get to, they'll get a break or they'll get just a gig and they'll end up on set and they will find out what you learn about, you know, and at this point, I've been doing it so long, a buddy of mine did an action film. And after I saw it, there was no, it wasn't. It was before it came out, but he talked about they filmed a helicopter crash in the action film, and it was a week of them on a, so you have a 4 a.m. call, right? You get picked up, you get taken to hair and makeup, they get their bruises or whatever put on them, and that takes an hour, 2 hours. They sit in their trailer, then they go to the set where the interior of a helicopter is ratcheted up 12 inches and then drop it. And they did that for 4 or 5 days in service of, in the film, a 90-second sequence. And that was a week's work, right? Now, he wasn't complaining. I wouldn't have been complaining.
Yeah.
But there are people who find out, holy shit, that's the job? And yeah, that's the job. There's the expression is hurry up and wait. It's a job where you're always ready, you're always prepared, and you are always waiting.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody. And I know actors who've succeeded a great deal and who are, it doesn't interest them anymore because of how much downtime there is, and how again, it's not for everybody. Now, the flip side of that is, for me, if I'm on a set, at least to date, and I've been on more than a couple, I am never anything other than a pig in shit. Like, I want to learn, what is that I've never seen one of those before. Tell me about this thing. What do you do? The whole, it is the entire ecosystem of making a AAA game title, or the ecosystem of making a movie is thrilling.
That's the thing. You need to have that hunger and the passion for constant, like, it's like the pick and shit thing is a really good way to describe it. Like, whenever I've done television or anything like that involves me being on a set, I am so fascinated as well. I don't have to be behind the camera, but I like to go, I wonder how that works, or this, or I want to help people take things out to the van, or, you know, and people are going, no, 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 you need to sit down. I'm like, no, no, no. I really, really want to help you carry this and then ask you about the mics. Because I'm a nerd and I like all of it. You have to be really interested in it. It's not about, you know, just going, oh, well, you're being charismatic and amazing in front of a camera or behind, or it's your voice or whatever it may be. The whole thing is fascinating. What a silly job. What a silly thing to make this amazing end product, whatever it may be. And even when I'm working events, I like to see how relationships work between people. I'm like, oh, they clearly don't like each other. Okay. And this person over here, right? Okay, don't talk to them. Okay, right. And that's a very interesting landscape, because events are crazy.
Yeah.
They're weird, but they're amazing. And that, I like to see how things work there as well. I like the inner workings of things. I think that's always fascinated me. Get good. I've always thought you just got to get good and understand everything, so that you can, so if somebody drops out or there's a panic or whatever, you can stand up and go, okay, well, I know about mics because I stream and I asked you a bunch of questions, so let's try and do this. So I quite like to jump in. But going back to, because I digress, going back to LA, you know, you're talking about being on sets now and being an actor and how much you love it. You know, when you came to LA, did you have that stereotypical thing where you were like, oh man, what have I done? This is very difficult. Or was it plain sailing for you when you got here?
Sort of neither, maybe both. I came, I knew very much what I was doing, in that I came to put up a one-man show that I'd already done in New York. And so I came with an agenda, and a mission and experience. What I didn't really have was an ecosystem. You know, in New York, I had started, I was at Tisch School of the Arts, where I got my degree, you know, Playwrights Horizons Theater School. And you come out the other side of the degree program, and you are, you're not established, but you know where you live, you know people, you have an ecosystem. In LA, I didn't really. There was a man who's still a friend of mine, Jim Tosney, who had lived in New York, and I got to LA and I let him know I was here, and he said, "Are you doing? Do you want to be on stage this weekend?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, absolutely." And he was with a theater company that still exists out here called Sacred Fools Theater Company, and there used to be a show called Crime Scene, and so I found an ecosystem rather swiftly, and my solo show got me the attention of a network, and that got me in front of a lot of casting directors, and that got me onto the lots and things. So I didn't quite know how well I was doing. I didn't. And then the other thing is that sort of stops. You know, you're a fresh fish in LA, and everybody's sort of excited, and everybody wants to meet you, and they meet you, and they know you're here, and you get to the other side of that flurry of excitement, and don't call us, we'll call you, and now you're back to waiting. And so yeah, I didn't quite have an existential crisis. I'd had enough of those in New York when I got to LA, but I did, you know, I had all of these sort of bullet points, these things that I was going to accomplish and that I did accomplish. And then I got to the end of that list and I didn't really know what to do after that. And then it was a lot of, I mean, the 2000s, it was a lot of, you know, okay, I'm in the union and I'm paying my dues literally and figuratively, but it's, you know, guess co-star this, co-star that, little bits, and it doesn't even feel like a career really, and you don't really understand it. It takes time and distance to really see, oh, okay, no, so I was working pretty consistently and I was doing this, that, and the other. But the thing is even now, and I it's funny, when the whole world went into lockdown, I think a lot of artists were nonplussed. This is what they were doing anyway. Sitting at home and waiting for something to happen. But I do think it's, we're at a moment now. I'm very proud member of the Screen Actors Guild, the SAG-AFTRA, and we're in negotiations over our contract. It's existential. I've got a lot of friends who are in the Writers Guild of America. I have been joining them on the picket line when I can, and trying to demonstrate solidarity for them. But we're all in a position now where we're fighting for the ability, the means by which to live, and the means by which to continue to do what we love to do. And it's a challenging moment on the one hand, but on the other hand, an out-of-work actor, an out-of-work writer, there is no successful writer or actor who did not at one point know exactly what it was to not be successful, did not know exactly what it was to not be paid, did not know exactly what it was to not know where the next job's coming from. So I think that we're kind of in that position now altogether, but I think that we have the tools. I hope we have the tools.
Fingers crossed. Fingers
well,
crossed.
We'll see. We'll see. Here's the thing. I'm not worried about the existence of acting. I'm not worried about the existence of writing. What I am worried about is a world in which the only people that can afford to do it are people that can afford to do anything.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And do you think, now you've got this community, you've been working in LA for so long. Do you feel that you would have found the same community, success, be thinking in the same way as you do now, if you hadn't moved to LA and if you stayed in New York? Do you think you'd be the same person, I guess?
It's a really interesting, it's not something. So an interesting thing happened. And it's funny, while I was posed your question for what this interview would be about, which is turning points in your life, I thought about the audition for Red Dead Redemption. I looked it up. That was in 2008. I got the notification for what became Dutch van der Linde. But it was produced by Rockstar San Diego. So I got hired in Los Angeles alongside Rob Wiedoff, who plays John Marston, Steve J. Palmer, who plays Bill Williamson, and Jim Bentley, who plays Edgar Ross. I think we're the ones who came from the first game to the second game. I was hired in LA because it was produced in LA. The Red Dead Redemption 2 was made in New York.
Oh.
And so Rockstar had to fly me out for every session that we did, which was a much longer commute than the one when it was just Santa Monica. Speaking of driving to Santa Monica, it was a lot of days. I mean, I did over 100 days of performance capture. I think comfortably over 100 days of performance capture on that, and that was over nearly 5 years. But it was a really interesting again, this is my long-winded way to get to answer your question, which is I got to meet a lot of actors who, and I'm now about to turn 51 years old, which is very old. It feels very old.
It's not that much older than me. It's all good.
Yeah,
We're all
it
old.
somehow it feels rather different because now I can, when you turn 25, you now understand what a quarter century is. I now understand what half a century is. In a way, you do not yet understand.
Not yet, but I'm
So,
just behind you.
yeah, I know. Don't don't be in any hurry.
No, I'm not. Oh
But
no.
but what what happened was everybody that was not established on Red Dead 1 was a New York hire for Red Dead 2. So for all of those days working, I met and Rockstar, if you're an actor in New York, I am 100%, and you're auditioning at all, I am 100%, and you're any good. You have auditioned, I am certain, for Rockstar Games and for Law and Order. And those two things, if you haven't, you need a better agent. You need you need to sort some things out. But so the actors that I got to intersect with along the way on Red Dead Redemption 2 were all ages, all shapes and sizes, but all New York actors who had gone, and some of them were New York actors from the 90s. So I sort of got to talk to a lot of folks who stayed, a lot of folks who didn't make the choice that I made, a lot of folks who didn't move to LA. And it was interesting. It wasn't quite sliding doors level interesting, but it was
interesting.
And here, this is a very odd thing that just happened. And I know we're not talking about industry stuff, but this is so I did a small thing for James Gunn on Guardians 3. Mm-hmm. And I'm at the premiere for Guardians 3, and there's another actor in there named Miriam Shore, who's a New York-based actor. And before the movie begins, I didn't know, and she plays, I forget the character's name, but she's one of the two scientists who works alongside Chuck Woody's High Evolutionary. And I don't know if you've seen it or not, but she and I did a movie called Flushed in 1998 in New York City. I hadn't seen her since then. And Miriam, still lived on the Lower East Side. And I'm a little, it was quite a flex that she's I trust in a different apartment, but she's still a New York actor, which is really what we all want it to be. And that we end up all of these years later in another movie together. It's pretty bizarre and surreal, and really a lot of fun to see her. But it is, I guess if there's a moral to that story, it's location only means so much,
right?
And I think moving to Los Angeles did change me. But a thing, I think you're going to go through this, you're about to go through this yourself. There is a thing about packing your whole life into a truck that kind of reminds you that your whole life is not the shit that's in that truck. Your whole life is kind of you. And there's another thing about sort of lifting everything up and moving across the country to a place where you don't know anybody. It reminds you, and I think we all need to be reminded sometimes, of really how much control we do have, how much command we have over our own lives and our own circumstances. And a buddy I was defending LA, which gets knocked around a lot, and has been knocked around by circumstances a lot as well. And some guy was shitting on LA, and I defended her. And he said, why are you sticking up for Los Angeles? And I said, because my dreams came true here.
Yeah.
And that's why. And but who knows? Miriam's dreams came true while she was still in New York.
Exactly.
And it's the location is only part of it.
It's our own, life is our own finger painting, you
I love all of your analogies are like your smudged pieces of clay, your messy finger painting. I mean, I feel like smudged pieces of clay all the time.
Oh yes, so do I. So do I, especially after like moving boxes around this flat, 20 years of stuff moving around. But it's like a finger painting, and it's like you put the paint in your hands, whatever color you want, and you do this and do that and do this and do that, and maybe make a squiggly line like a Pollock painting. Or he used to throw his body across the canvas, and I've seen Pollock's stuff like close up and in a book. You're like, it's a mess, whatever. But when you see that art up close, you can see the force in which he might have moved his body over the canvas or put some rope or whatever. And it's the same with the finger painting. Sometimes we move with full forces, sometimes we're softer, sometimes we collaborate. And I think the only thing I've learned, not the only thing, but one of the most important things I've learned over the last year especially is the one constant thing is change. That one constant thing is change, and to not be scared of it. It's something that will happen again and again and again and again. And even if you stay in one place your whole life, well, your body changes, your metabolism changes, your hair changes, people around you change, so you can't stop it. So you might as well just embrace it and be kind of like, I don't know, yeah, happy about it somehow, and just go, yeah, man. Like, I've been watching a lot of videos, Ben. Like, so, yeah, man, just feeling that vibration, yeah, just feeling the change, man.
Well, again, you can talk crystals and vibrate. LA's the right place for it.
I'm ready.
I don't like I bring up energy from time to time in the class that I teach, and every time I sort of I put like a little footnote. I'm from New England. I lived in New York. I'm saying energy.
Hey, look, I'm from Glasgow, right? Yeah. And I don't care. I'm embracing it. I'm like, yeah, man. I'm just riding that wave, like trying to, vibrate high. I'm vibrating high right now, Ben. I want to let the universe show me the stuff, manifestation. I'm all about it. I'm all about it. But yeah. If anything, what those videos have taught me is that to just not live in lack and live in abundance, and to not go, I want, because I was doing a lot of that. I do a lot of that with work. I want that job. I want that. I need that. And just to go, actually, I'm working consistently and I really like my friends and I'm having a fun time. Like, and isn't that what matters, really? Yes, things could always be better. I'd love a more consistent, job or something, but if you put out that happiness and feeling, the hope is that you will attract the right things. Obviously, you've got to send an email or two, but like, I can't just lie there in bed drinking tea, hoping it comes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about The Secret. I don't know if The Secret really works. I haven't read it, but I do believe in the Stoics, and they will tell you, that it's about being grateful for what you have as opposed to focusing on the things you don't have.
Yeah.
Remembering what's in your control and letting go of what is not in your control.
100%. It doesn't always work because we're human. And sometimes you wake up and go, I just want to lose a couple of pounds and get a good job. You're just like, fuck's sake, universe. I'm really impatient. This is not good. So sometimes you just want the universe to hurry the fuck up. It's just, so I'm trying patience. We'll see how that works in LA if I don't work for a few months and I can't pay the rent. So we'll see.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you'll find a way.
Yeah,
You'll find a way.
You'll be going, ha, where's your vibrations now, Claire? Like, God damn it. God.
No. You never gloat. I'll never gloat over being right or wrong about vibrations.
And
But I
energies.
but I think I don't know. I think the whole world's been through a lot, and I think it'll be it. LA. I was when I got to LA. It was sort of in a downward trajectory, and I was here through the aughts as the city sort of exploded in the cuisine and the arts, and everything kind of exploded. And I think we're on the other side of this upheaval, and I feel like LA is getting back on its feet. So I think you're coming at the right time for LA to explode again with arts and culture and good vibrations.
I'm excited. I like that. Oh, Ben, it was so lovely chatting to you. Honestly, like I only ask people on this podcast that I vibe with, man.
Well, dude, I'm so happy that our energies were in aligned. But it's a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to let's the proper way to do it would be let's do lunch when you get to LA.
Except I won't cancel, and I'll definitely do lunch. Unlike
Yeah.
unlike a lot of LA people. Oh my God, let's do lunch. Oh my God, we should totally do lunch.
There's a thing for me that if we make a plan, I keep a plan. I guess I brought this from New York, but like I'll show up for lunch and somebody won't be there, and I'll call them and I'll be like, "Weren't we having lunch on the 12th?" And they said, "Yeah, but you didn't call me yesterday, so I assumed we were off." Like,
no, that's a cop
why
out.
why would you? Well, there are people that would defend that point of view, and they live in Los Angeles.
Well,
So
now that I know that, I'll be calling them up a day or two before, like, we're doing lunch, right? Like, but then at the same time, I think.
But I don't do that. I think show up, have them stand you up, and then call them and make them feel like shit for it. That's how I do it.
Take a picture of me with lunch, like, just like, fuck's sake. No, I'm from the UK and I'm from Glasgow. Like, if I say I'm doing something, I'm doing something. Like, I don't operate under that kind of fake pretense. Even when I've worked in LA and stuff, I'm quite brutally honest. I'm not sure how they take me, but I'm like, I'm not going to change. Not now.
Don't change. Don't you dare.
We're too old for that. I'm not changing. Or I'm too old. Sorry, you're older, but I am too old for that too. Anyway, let's not talk about being old. Shit. Thank you.
It's all relative anyway.
Exactly. Ben, it was lovely chatting to you. Thank you very much for being part of Hot Pod Time Machine. Thank you to everybody who's listening along on Spotify and Audible, and who's watching along on YouTube. Give us a hit the notification bell, you guys. Subscribe and all that shit, whatever the kids say. Give us a wee subscribe, and thank you very much for listening. This has been Hot Pod Time Machine. I'm Claire. This is Ben, and we'll see you soon. Bye.